Hey YouTubers, just wanted to upload this quick video. This is my first custom water-cooled hardline PC build. Probably took me over a month to actually put together because I had to get the right fittings and make sure everything lined up is as nice and straight as possible. So I'll kind of go through the components that are in here a little bit. And as you can probably see, the runs are not perfectly parallel, but I think they were good enough, and I was happy with it considering it was the first time I've ever done this. So obviously, as you can probably see, this is the Lian Li O11 Dynamic XL case, and I have the distro plate in the front here. So we'll just walk around to some of the components in here. So here we go. Here's the distro plate. That's everything's by EK. So I got the EK Quantum Reflection distro plate. Got the EK Quantum Vector GPU water block. PSU. We got the Corsair 850 watt RMx series, and that's all fully modular cables. And I actually did get custom Cablemod cables to go with that. I don't think I have that here in the video. Here's some of the fittings. This is the EK Quantum Torque. This is their special blue collar fittings, and then there's a special ring that I got in here too that's also blue to match, so these look pretty cool. I got a motherboard wise, there's a 690 Gigabyte Aorus 690 Aorus Master. This is a pretty nice motherboard. Wasn't cheap, but this is a DDR5 motherboard, PCIe 5.0 ready, so I think that's probably coming with future firmware updates, but it is DDR5, and this DDR5 I actually was pretty fortunate. I got it from the Newegg Shuffle. This is a G.Skill Trident Z DDR5 5600 speed. Instead of the i9-12900K, I decided to go for the i7-12700K. Everything I've been reading says that basically the i9 really takes a lot of power and really can heat up the whole room. So I was like, you know what, I don't really need that much power. I can probably get the same amount of gaming performance out of the i7, and I actually got it for $100 less than this. So this was actually a pretty good price from Micro Center. For the graphics card, I got the MSI Gaming Z Trio RTX 3080. So that with the GPU water block. I'll show you that to you in a second. Here's the CPU block. Also got the EK Quantum Velocity, and this is specifically for the 12th gen Intel processors. So this looks pretty nice too. Hard drive. This is the Samsung 980 Pro PCIe 4.0. So obviously it'll be a little bit faster than 3.0, even though it's supposed to be, I think, like twice the speed. Reality is you don't really feel it in the real world. And then in terms of fans, I decided to go with the Lian Li Fan AL120 series. And I think the reason for that is the AL120 series, the fans actually get a little bit brighter than the SL series. And I do actually like them better than the Corsair LL fans, because the Corsair LL fans, there's just a lot more wiring involved. The back of the case. So I'll kind of go through this a little bit, and then I'll actually fill it so you guys can see that too. So as you can see, I decided to put in a 60 millimeter thick 360 millimeter long radiator at the bottom. So I think for me the biggest thing is performance, so I wanted to put as thick a radiator as possible. So there's a 60 millimeter thick 360 radiator at the bottom, and at the top there is a 40 millimeter thick 360 radiator at the top. So I wanted to try to get as much as possible. Probably would have looked a little bit cleaner with a thinner rad, but with this particular build I wanted performance versus necessarily looks. As you can see, these look sweet. These are the EK Satin Titanium fittings. So I had nickel, but when I saw these and I put them in the case, I'm like, wow, that actually looks really nice. So I decided to change all the fittings and went with satin titanium. So I think the satin titanium with the blue collars actually gives it a nice different color scheme. Here's the, I did get the back plate too. So I got the back plate for the RTX 3080. Here's the GPU block. This is new. I should send this to EK, but these are actually the micro fittings, 90-degree micro fittings that are in satin titanium. So this actually allows me shorter height and distance than the traditional 90-degree fittings. So I'll probably send a couple of pictures to EK because the recommendation they gave me, it didn't really work for my build. So these actually came in really handy. Tubing wise, these are actually acrylic tubes. At first I was doing PETG, but then realized that acrylic is actually a lot clearer than, not a lot, but acrylic is clearer than PETG. Also the PETG, when I was sanding it at the end and making sure that I was getting all the burrs, be able to stick in the fittings, it was a little bit soft. So it was actually hard to kind of sand and get smooth. Whereas since the acrylic is actually a little bit more brittle, I was actually able to get a smoother deburr at the end of them. So I think acrylic, even though a little bit harder to bend, I actually think that it was well worth it because it actually, the tubing is actually clearer than PETG. So this did come out actually pretty nice. And it takes a little bit longer to heat up than PETG, but I think overall it's a small difference. I wouldn't say it's a huge difference, but I think acrylic actually shows a little bit clearer when you see it in person. One thing I will say is you would think, let me move back a little bit, you would think that with this EK distribution plate here, you would think that, you know, where the water and the fittings go in and out should line up perfectly, right? With the CPU block, with the GPU block, with where the radiator would be. But that actually was not the case. Sorry about that, that's my finger. That's actually not the case. So I had to get some offset fittings. It was kind of annoying, and I think that's what kind of took me a while to get this finished. So for example, there's an offset fitting here. That's a 14mm offset because this run doesn't line up. So I had to get an offset fitting here. There's also a 14mm offset fitting in here. I think that's a 7mm offset fitting on the CPU block. So I had to use 3 offset fittings there. And, you know, good thing this new micro 90-degree fitting came out, because with the regular 90-degree fittings, it would have been too high and would have went in too much. So, and as you can probably see, not perfectly parallel. Okay, there's a little bit of sag there because this GPU block is pretty heavy, but not perfect, but good enough that I don't think it would have been worth putting a 3mm offset fitting here. So I didn't bother with that. So not as easy as I thought it would be, but I think in the end it all worked out okay. Just, you know, I had to try a lot of different fittings, see what fit the best. Which is probably why it took me over a month to get because I did get this completed, because I did actually order a lot of parts directly from EK, which is, you know, their parts are made in Slovenia. Okay, so let's look around the front of the case. Okay, so this is where I can put a drain when I want to drain and maintain the PC. This is where I'm actually about to fill it. And initially I was going to try to put a drain on the inside of the PC, but then, you know, with all this tubing, I'm not going to be able to easily drain it. So I'll just have to figure that out in a year or two when I decide to actually maintain this thing. So I think what I'm going to do now is, been talking for a while now, so you can take a quick look at it. If you have questions, because I'm sure a lot of you are using the same case and probably very similar components from EK. This was the biggest challenge here, getting the right fittings to fit the distro plate. So I'm going to actually pause it real quick. I'm going to fill this up, and then you'll see what this thing looks like when it's turned on. All right, so let me start filling this thing. Only thing I'm using is distilled water, and I use the EK cryo fuel. So you basically mix the EK cryo fuel. Comes in 100 ml with 900 ml of distilled water. So I thought about using you know, different color PC coolant, but all the reviews I've been reading and seeing on YouTube is that everybody has problems with it. So I was like, you know what, let me just play it safe. I don't want to have to maintain this thing too often. So I just went with basically distilled water. So let me just fill this thing up. does take a lot of coolant because that 360 rad, the two 360 rads, 140 millimeter, and the bottom one obviously 60 millimeter stick takes a lot of water. So I'm sure I'll speed this up. Okay, so it's filled up. Just waited a couple of minutes, make sure there's no leaks. So there shouldn't be any leaks because I pressure tested it. One thing that did bother me a little bit, you may or may not be able to see it. There's a little bubble there since, since basically there's no fittings from here on up. So that's where the actual acrylic tube is, and the rest of these are actually empty. So there was like no water coming through here. So what I tried to do was open up this plug, try to get some air to come out, that way the water would fill up. I did, and then it started to leak. So I stopped it as soon as possible, and I will be stuck with one little bubble that'll be there forever until at least the next time I drain it. So I'm going to now take out this jumper off the 24-pin motherboard cable. I'm going to plug in the motherboard, and then we'll get this booted up. All right, let's turn this bad boy on.